G'day friends, welcome to today's YouTube video. My name is James, welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you are new. Today I'm going to be painting a few things with my Arteza gouache palette. I have a video on YouTube setting this palette up, so if you want to see more about it and a few of my first impressions, go and check that out. It's called My Perfect Gouache Palette Setup and Thoughts. If you want to see any of the other videos that I've ever done on this channel, I've also recently created a playlist if you go to my channel, if you go to the playlists, there'll be one that says all JLB creative videos, and it's got over 500 videos in there at this point. It is every single publicly accessible video that I've put onto YouTube since I started my kind of mixed media journey back in 2017. So hopefully that'll keep you busy for a few hours if you're ever looking for some extra content from me. There are a ton of playlists there that are themed, but that one in particular has every video. So you can go back and witness some of my more interesting videos trying to figure out how to become a YouTuber back in 2017. Or yeah, I mean, there's tons. I've literally shared my entire journey thus far through that playlist. It's actually kind of interesting to go back and watch. I try not to cringe. I think people get that way. I used to be that way about dancing as well, but I've since separated enough time from that to look back and just think, at that moment, that's what I had. That's where my skill was at. I was very proud to share it then, so I should still be proud of it now, even if I've grown since then. I think, if anything, it's not really cringy. It's just a testament to the growth that I've had. So I tell myself that, but sometimes it is a little cringy. I think you could tell at the start, I really didn't know what I was doing as far as like how much of me should be on the screen or how much I should be sharing. I've always kind of struggled on YouTube and social media spaces because I'm quite a private person and there's so much that I just refuse to share. Just because I think it's just inappropriate to share that amount of your life. But I know right back then, that was back in the day where I didn't even think I could share like the problems I was having, the kind of issues I was having with the medium, or if I didn't like what I had created, I felt like I should have to redo the whole video. Those are interesting times I'm happy to have grown through. But if you want to see any of those videos, like I said, all there in the playlist and you can go and check that out. I did it because YouTube was kind of limiting how far you could scroll through the channel history. And so I felt bad that I'd spent tons of time on all these videos that I'm proud of throughout these past few years, and I don't want them to just be lost, forever. So since no one could access them scrolling through my channel, you'd have to know the exact name to search for. I thought I'm going to put them all in a playlist, that way they'll all be somewhere for you, and they're in chronological order, so you can literally see where we've come from and how we've arrived to this point where I am painting numbers on a page and not stressing out about the fact that it's not the most interesting thing to see. I mean, maybe it is. I certainly love the colors that I was doing. I want to claim more credit for the color palette, but to be honest, I just used the colors in my palette as they were lined up. And then what I do a lot of the time when I've got these kind of projects that are production line style, so I do, all the numbers first. I did all the numbers and their boxes, and then now I fill in all the boxes with a different color. I tend to have all of my colors in an order, and then I offset the order and then just go again. So if you see, the first box is filled with neon pink, then the next box is filled with light blue, then the next box is filled with light pink. If you go right underneath that line, you'll see number 8, 9, and 10. The line and the number are the same colors as the fill. So what all I'm saying is, like, I'll offset the number enough so that the colors don't overlap, and it's kind of a production line style at that point. So I can't really take credit for it. It's just the way the paints are set up, and the fact that I'm not really interested in trying to find color mixes with any kind of thought. I like the randomness of it. I like seeing which ones work and which ones I'm drawn to, and I just don't want to really think about it. I just want to do it. I think such is the way that I create anyway. I would rather not sit there and think about the theory of everything or try to apply too much thought. I'm a bit more hands-on and learn through the process. So this was kind of interesting to do. There is a purpose to this. I'm not really going to go into why I'm doing these things today, but hopefully you'll find out more about it at some point if I decide to share it and do it. Anyway, I've used a black pencil just to outline all the boxes with texture. I just like to mix up the texture. Some of that gouache is a little thin in areas. It creates its own little streaky texture. Some of it's very flat and it's all very matte. So I could put that metallic Corinne brush marker on top as well. And then obviously the black pencil border, and now just a white gel pen. That is a Uniball Signo gel pen. I have the most luck with those gel pens. And even though it's the broad tip, I don't really have that much luck with the fine one, but you can still get pretty thin lines if you kind of become more confident with the pen. Because I used to really not like it because I thought, well, I can't get any fine white line detail. But I have since found that the more confident I become with the pen, the easier it is to manipulate into the ways that I want to use it. And it really isn't that thick, but it's a broad pen. You kind of need it because that white ink is so viscous that it doesn't tend to flow well unless the opening for that ballpoint is wide enough. So that's why I find that those Uniball Signo Broad are a better gel pen for that. Anyway, so this is my obviously a month's worth of numbers. I say obviously, maybe you didn't catch that, but there are 31 and I've finished that. I kind of like it. I love the colors. I love all the texture. That it just kind of worked. It was nice little production line style. And I don't know if I just explained that, but by that I just mean I do one job and then I do another job and then I do another job, and I don't do each one individually. It tends to really speed up your process if you're doing something like this, if you're someone that likes to make a kind of a series of things. So here I've got my 3 little mountains. It's a great way to create in the sense that you've got this continuity and this through line, but also it's a good way to speed up that process. And I don't really know who I'm talking to at this point, because in my head I'm actually talking to other creators, but I don't know how many of them watch my channel. But it's one of those tips that I would definitely recommend if you're trying to speed up the process. Some people do. Some people look to speed up their process because there are certain parts of the process they don't enjoy, or some people look to speed up the process because they're like me and they're creating content, whether it's, content for people to purchase and play with, like products, or if it's content for videos and digital content for people to consume on social media or like YouTube channels. There is a really good point to looking for ways to speed up your processes. Anyway, that's what I find. There are other things as well. Like I was thinking I should recommend this because I don't know who needs to hear this, but it's very much that. Like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but on Photoshop, I create a lot of actions. If you don't know Photoshop, this is going to sound stupid, but I created a lot of actions, especially for when I've scanned things and I need the colors to be consistent, or even things like cut lines, because I have a silhouette portrait machine, like a cutting machine. And so when I want to create cut lines to work for that I want to import into the silhouette, I've got a cut line action that does a really good job of auto-generating cut lines, which is something that people typically do in Illustrator, but I do in Photoshop. Because I tried doing it in Illustrator, it was so difficult, and I ended up paying so much money just to have Illustrator for that one purpose. And I found that a lot of my manufacturers didn't even need that file. They were happy if I just gave them a PDF of the cut line and they translated it into their systems, because usually when you do manufacturing, they've got to put it into their systems anyway, and not all manufacturers use the same systems. So I usually just ask them, can I give you the cut line in a PDF? And if they say no, I just move on to the next manufacturer. But yeah, it's not been a problem for me. I know that means nothing to people that don't do that, but there you go. There's one of my tips for today if you're a creator and you needed to hear that. Anyway, I'm doing the same kind of production line style like I said before. I do one action. This time it's all color, so if I had one color on my brush, I would make sure that it showed up on all 3 of these little mountains and hills. I really like how these turned out. They kind of took on a life of their own. At the start, I was like, this is definitely not going to work. But the more I started layering over everything and adding different shapes and adding different colors, the more I really started to see it come together. And it was quite an interesting and fun process, especially with gouache. I could never imagine layering this many watercolors over each other, just for the fact that the transparency of all of these layers would just make it a headache. But with gouache, because it's so opaque and flat, you can layer over the top and it's just like a new layer. And having worked on Procreate on my iPad, it gave me a good feeling of like, oh, I'm doing Procreate on my paper, which is stupid because the paper came first, obviously, but it's interesting sometimes switching from digital formats to traditional formats, and people really, really enjoy the fact that on Procreate you can undo, or on Photoshop you can go backwards, you can undo the last thing you did and you can correct yourself. Of course I enjoy that when I have to do that. It's been really difficult. Sometimes I've been on my iPad so much, like when I used to make ephemera packs and I would do all the cut lines manually, I would spend so much time doing that. Or when I made that mermaid coloring book years ago, I spent so much time on my iPad that when I went to my paper, I tried to double tap my paper to go backwards and was devastated when I realized, oh, that mistake's there. Like that's traditional media. I can't just undo it by tapping the page. It was so funny, but this provided a really interesting experience because it's not a way that I've ever really played with gouache before, but it's one of the best features of gouache is that it's opaque and it's so layerable. And this was all rehydrated from that pan. These were all dry cakes of gouache that I rehydrated, which I've typically had a problem with because if when you leave it to dry, you've got to add a lot of water to it. The more water you add to gouache, the thinner it gets, the less you're going to have that flat lay of color. So what I did, and I didn't really show it in the video, but I thought I might just mention it as well. If you have those dry cakes, like I had set up, I actually poured a little bit of water into the well where the cake was, and I just let it sit there for a while. Give it about half an hour if you can to an hour, and just let it soak it all up. It starts to become a little mushy. If you can as well, just put a little bit of the same color from the tube on top of the cake and then kind of mix that around in the water. It started to almost become like a slush after a while, which was really easy to, get my brush in there and kind of squiggle it around until it all dissolved. Not all of it, like there was still some crumbly bits of cake in there, but and not real cake, I should say, but the gouache cake, the dried out cake. It just re-wet really well and it became really opaque. So there is definitely value in letting that soak in for a while to be able to get that flat lay of color. Here I'm going to talk about what I'm doing. It's just stars. It's stars on stars on stars on stars on stars. I wanted to do a ton of different mediums, a ton of different techniques, a ton of different colors, and then fill a whole page with stars, much like how I did. There's my phone. Sorry about that. Actually, that wasn't my phone. It was the computer that did that ding. How do I turn the computer's one off? I don't know. Sorry if that keeps going. It's Steve. He wants to know what I want from the grocery store. Oh, life. What was I saying? The materials that I was using, I was having just a really good time picking anything and everything up. And this, again, kind of felt like that very traditional sense of how people like to use Procreate to layer layers on top of layers on top of layers, textures on top of layers on top of colors. It was a really interesting kind of blend of the thoughts that were going on in my head that felt very like I was working in Procreate, and the fact that I was doing it manually. I will always kind of say this just because I know people have asked before why I don't do more digital work, especially seeing as, it does save a lot of time for people. I just can't replicate the experience of using all these supplies. All of these supplies just kind of sit around my desk. They're in little pots and pans and now my little, ceramic tumblers. I just love picking them up. I love the smell of the wood, of the pencils. I love the feeling of the drag of the paint. I love to watch that watercolor just go on a little journey through the water on the page. I like the feeling of the tooth of the paper. Like there's just so many different sensations I cannot replicate on the computer and on the iPad. I do agree though that you can replicate a lot of the textures and a lot of the, a lot of the reality of traditional media can be worked very digitally, but I just can't replicate the feeling, and that's the most important part for me because when I really think about enjoying the process and capitalizing on all the things that make me enjoy why I do this, why I sit down and how this could be so meditative for me for 2 hours, it is all of that. it's all of that very tangible experience, and it's all of the different supplies literally, kind of performing their chemistry in front of you. You see that some things don't even work the way that you expected them to work, or layering one color on top of another made a color that you would never have guessed. Even with adding some of these shimmery watercolors, I can't tilt my iPad and start to see glitter, but I can tilt this and the sun can hit it just right, and I start to see a shimmer in the corner of my page. Things like that really add to the joy of my experience. So it's a reason that I just don't think can be helped. I don't think there is a way to translate that on computer. Like, even there, just grabbing my spritz bottle and just spritzing those Inktense stars just to get that kind of smoky glow. I can't do that. If I took a spray bottle to my iPad, it's done. It's over. It's garbage at that point. Like, you can't do that. And those are all like playful experiences that I do enjoy about the process, more so than getting a result that, is perfectly neat, or, the ability to backspace or to, undo a certain action. That doesn't matter as much to me as actually enjoying that experience. And so, I definitely use digital for where I need to, and especially with, cut lines and cleaning things up and layering and putting together, handouts and PDFs and stuff. There's a lot of good things about why I use digital, and I love to scan, and obviously it's a great way to share a lot of the work that I do with everybody. But as far as the actual creating goes, it's really important to my process to use all these supplies that I've spent years gathering. Otherwise they just gather dust and it makes me feel terrible. So maybe I'm just assuaging my guilt, and that's why I just like traditional. No, I really do love it. And a lot of this was really fun because I was using just mostly whatever I had to hand. If it was around the desk, I would just pick it up. So there wasn't a lot of thought to this, and it was just layering and layering and layering, and lots of doodling. But because I was only doing stars, it kept my brain kind of unfocused. There was no really getting involved with making too many decisions or over planning anything. It was just a simple, put a star and then just keep putting stars until it's finished. And then if I had these little I want to put some strokes here, or I really like this pencil, I want to do some sunbursts here, I would just do that. And I love a white gel pen, so I was definitely going to do that at some point. So this was really, really fun. I had a really great time putting all this together, and it scanned up really beautifully. I can't wait to repurpose this into something, print it. Maybe I actually have these online labels sticker sheets that are stars. They're already pre-cut as stars, but I think I might want to size this down and print it on the stars, so it's star stickers of star print, because I like to be meta. But I had a really, really, really great time. This is the last piece that I'm going to be doing in this video, and hopefully you'll see them around again. Like did I say this before? There is a purpose to why I was doing this stuff today, but I'm just not ready to share that purpose yet. Feel free to leave your guesses in the comments below if you would like. I guess you could also really slow down the video and just copy whatever I was doing if you want to watch it that slowly, but I think you see it's just stars. If you've got all of your supplies in front of you, just keep drawing stars until your page is finished. Lots of different mediums though. Most of these, I will say, came from the Art Snacks supplies that I've been receiving for the past kind of 6 months. Doing the Art Snacks box freestyle videos, I get their plus box every month. Even the paper I used is from those boxes. So I've been just picking up all the stuff from there. I actually keep those supplies separate. Those are in a separate kind of ceramic little hand build thing that I made at Pottery. And I keep them in there so that I know which ones come from them, just in case I have to go back and revisit something. They didn't ask me to do that. I just did that because I would forget. But I tend to not pick it up as much because it's in that separate container. And I think, as with most people, if something's not to hand, if it's not really easily accessible, we don't tend to reach for it. So it's why I put a lot of my stuff in little planter pots and just put it right beside my desk. But because that one's separate, I decided to pop it on the table and then picked up mostly everything from it. I used so many of the supplies, and this was just another great way to get more familiar with them and to enjoy the experience of using just tons and tons of really great stuff. It's really great. I don't know if I ever say this, but I am very, very, very thankful to have these supplies. I know people say you don't need a lot, and I think that's true, but I know what it was like to wish for a supply, you know, kind of a supply closet that I've got now, and it is just as wonderful to use it all as you think it will be. So I don't want to take away from that experience, and I hope you're enjoying your supplies this weekend as well, and really feeling out that magic of creativity. I'll see you again soon. Bye.